Welcome back, Gadgeteers. Today we're going to talk about the MacBook Pro and why I'm getting rid of it. Before we move on, however, I'm going to tell you the reasons why I'm not getting rid of the MacBook Pro. Let's start with the first thing. Now, many of you know that I've done quite a few videos on the Pro. So here I've got the MacBook Pro 2017. Over here I've got a refurbished MacBook 2015 model, which I really like despite the fact that it only has the one port, which we'll get to in just a minute. Now, you may think that because I have these newer models, the reason that I'm getting rid of the MacBook Pro 2017 is because of the keyboard issues and the pending class action lawsuit that's going into place against Apple and the newer 2016 MacBook and MacBook Pros, and to some extent the 2017. Although, statistically speaking, the 2017 keyboard failure is basically on par with the 2014 and 2015 keyboard types. So they've done something right in the Butterfly redesign, version 2.0 if you will, that makes it much more sturdy and dependable than the 2016 model. Hopefully, if you have to send in an older one like the 2015 or 16 MacBooks or the 2016 MacBook Pro, you get one of the newer Butterfly keyboards. Now, I can definitely tell that the 2015 here does not have that newer keyboard, even though it's refurbished. And of course, the MacBook Pro does have version 2 of the Butterfly keyboard because it's the 2017 model. No, I'm not getting rid of it because of the keyboard. Surprisingly, I love the version 2.0 Butterfly keyboard. Now, there have been a lot of problems with people getting dust or having keys that will stop working or stick or press keystrokes twice. So if you press the X key, you get two of them instead of one. Surprisingly, I have not had a problem with either of these systems. I've had the 2017 now for about a year. I have never had an issue like that. The 2015 again is refurbished and it has the older style, the version 1.0 of the Butterfly keyboard, and I have yet to have a problem. So no, I'm not getting rid of it because of the keyboard. So you might say, he must be getting rid of it because of the ports. Again, surprisingly no. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the Yoga 920 that I use most of the time as my daily driver when I'm away from home does have a USB-A type port, so it uses one of the older ports, and it also has two USB-C ports, and they are also Thunderbolt 3, so I do have 4 PCIe lanes on that Yoga 920. So even though the MacBook Pro 2017 only has 2 USB ports, that's not actually the reason. No, I actually don't mind that too much, although again, it is nice to have that USB-A port, but I do have one dongle that I use quite frequently, and I have a USB-C to USB-A cable that I use, and all I do is plug in a regular 5-port USB-A type hub, and everything's fine. So it's not the ports. Now, if you've watched my videos, you've heard me say, for all the videos you see about the MacBook Pro, they say, the screen is beautiful. And then you hear me say, the screen is okay, but the resolution is a little bit lacking. I really would have expected a little bit more. When you compare these screens to my former Yoga 910 that I've now sold off, and my Yoga 920 that both have 4K screens, there simply is no comparison. It's night and day. The MacBook Pro, although it's very nice, is nowhere near as sharp as the Yoga 920 or the Yoga 910. So you might think that might be the reason that I'm going to sell the MacBook Pro. No, that's not it either. Really don't have a problem with that. It is a beautiful screen and it works just fine. So then you might say, well, if it isn't a hardware issue, it's not build quality and all of that, it must be a software issue. You must be getting rid of it because of Mac OS. Although it's not Mac OS itself, I really do like Mac OS quite a bit. I find that the ecosystem, if you will, isn't really all that I was hoping it would be. One of the things that I do like about the ecosystem is when I have my iPhone set up with messages, which I do, so I can just log into one of these MacBooks and start sending and receiving messages on the Mac. I really do like that, but that's about all I do like about the Apple ecosystem. And I know many of you out there have been saying this, Mark, you're not going to like it because of the ecosystem. You're going to find that you're kind of pigeonholed in. Well, there's pros and cons to that. One of which is, for the most part, these two systems, when they come up, they just work and they're ready to go. Now, I like to experiment with the Linux distro that I use primarily, which is Fedora, and I have messed it up. And I've actually messed up my Yoga 920 by experimenting with some Fedora and other Linux distro stuff, which I need to do a video for you, and we'll try to get that out in the next week so you can see that. But we're talking about Mac and Mac OS here. So with the Mac OS and Apple ecosystem, I feel like I am definitely cornered, and there's certain software that works great, and I do still use a lot of open source software on my MacBook Pro, to be sure. But the number one program for me at this point in time is actually the Kdenlive, or as some call it, Kdenlive editor. That is primarily for Linux. Now, you can, with a huge amount of effort, compile an older version for the MacBook Pro, but not even worth it, because the newer version, the files that you create, your project files, require the newer version, so it would just be a waste of time for me. So what I find that I was doing on this particular MacBook Pro was using iMovie. Now, I know, many of you are going to say, Mark, you've got to try Final Cut Pro. Well, I did try it, and it's a good editor. I won't deny it, and there's some things that it can do that certainly the open source editor that I use cannot do, not even by a long shot. But the fact is, I don't consider myself one of the editor extraordinaires like some of you out there. I see some beautiful videos that you guys make. I'm really not into all that, so my videos are more basic and informative versus style and technical ability. And I do not disparage somebody who's using Final Cut Pro. I think that somebody who is doing that and has turned it into an art is truly head and shoulders above what I'm capable of doing. But for me, I've invested a lot of time into Kdenlive, and I just don't feel like Final Cut Pro is an avenue that I want to look at least right now. I did use iMovie, and I was using it when I started about 100% of the time, but as time went on, I got better and better at Kdenlive, and I found that I don't use iMovie at all. As a matter of fact, if I do have to use iMovie, I'm literally disappointed and bummed out. Why? Because I haven't used it in so long, so I have to go back and kind of remember the style of editing that I did using iMovie. There's only been one time where I thought I was going to have to go back to iMovie, at least for a few days. I had a problem with my laptop. I upgraded it to Fedora 28, and I was having a problem getting Kdenlive to open my project templates that I had created, so I wasn't able to use that. But my main computer, I was able to edit on, thankfully, using Fedora 27. So I really did not want to have to go back to iMovie, but there was a point where I was thinking, oh my God, you know, if my main computer has a problem, I will be editing with iMovie tonight. And I thought, oh, that'll be a disaster. Some of the footage that you put into iMovie or Final Cut Pro, you have to convert, so I can't get MKV files, for example, to work in iMovie, so I have to convert them to the MOV type or MP4, something that iMovie can work with. All of that's an encumbrance because a Handbrake, quite frankly, isn't fast enough for me. I don't think it really matters how good your computer is. Having to wait for Handbrake to do a conversion, and also no matter how you slice it, you get somewhat of a degradation in quality. It's hardly noticeable, but every time you have a new iteration of a video file, unfortunately, you are going to lose just a hair of quality. So the ecosystem thing really isn't doing it for me. As a matter of fact, and I think many of you probably won't be too surprised to hear me, the next time I buy a new phone, it's probably going to be an Android phone again. Right now I'm recording my video on my Galaxy Note 4. I was able to put a 128 gigabyte card in it, so I have, I won't say an infinite amount of memory for editing purposes, but plenty. And as with the MacBook Pro, I found that the iPhone has some hard limitations. And I'll just give you one example. I'm really annoyed that I am not able to have, for example, if you're in Facebook, a link go directly to a specific external browser that you want. Although the browser that's included with the iPhone Safari is sufficient, I really like Firefox. Firefox, for me, actually works really well. I've got all my plugins. I'm even signed up on Firefox Sync so that whenever I log into any Firefox on any of my systems, including my phone, I instantly, of course, have all of my favorites. I have all of my bookmarks. I have all of my settings. I have all of my plugins. Everything's there, passwords, the whole kit and caboodle. So I really like that. And of course, I could have done that with Safari, but what is Safari lacking? Plugins. Unfortunately, I found that there may be some plugins, but especially on the phone, there are none. So this ecosystem kind of constricted me, and I really didn't like that. I really think that the final nail in the coffin was the fact that I went out and bought this 2015 MacBook, and it's refurbished. It has twice the storage of my MacBook Pro. It actually has 512 gigabytes as opposed to the 256 here that I actually did pay extra for. And honestly, I've been able to make it work, although I have to do what I have to do with any computer, really, my Yoga 920. When I'm doing videos and I get too many edited videos or too much raw footage on my Yoga 920 or the MacBook Pro, I have to move it off onto some type of portable drive. Everything that I want to do on the MacBook Pro, I can easily do on the MacBook. Not only that, I have it set up for dual boot so I can boot into Windows for my work environment, of course, because I do training and teaching about Windows 10 and Microsoft Office and other applications. So I found that I don't even use this hardly ever for work. The SSD is too small to actually make it useful as a dual boot system, and I found that the MacBook works perfectly well in Windows 10, works perfectly well in Mac OS. And I get the added bonus that the MacBook is only 2 pounds versus the 3.04 or so pounds of the MacBook Pro. And I'm trying to lighten my load when I have to walk around campus, of course, because my heart have a little bit of issues with that if you haven't seen my previous older videos. So I try to lighten the load as much as possible, and I can do that with the MacBook. I can even edit in 1080p just fine on the MacBook. I can do videos of varying length. I just have to have a little bit more patience when I'm doing the rendering. But as everybody here knows, iMovie is very, very, very fast at rendering and makes very good use of the hardware. So that's a major plus. I can have that on the MacBook or the MacBook Pro. So why keep the MacBook Pro? I honestly found that the only thing I was using it for was to open it up, and because I love the architecture of it and the build quality of the MacBook Pro, I would take the time to clean it and keep it nice. I enjoy typing on the version 2.0 keyboard much more than I do on the MacBook, but definitely not enough to keep it around for an email and light web browsing machine when I could use that money for something else. So in closing, what do I have to say about the MacBook Pro? It's me. It's not you. It's me. I also could say, I'm really sorry, but I found somebody else, and she does just as good a job as you do. What can I say? It's really the way it is. I mean, we have to think in financial terms at least sometimes. Yeah, I do want to keep it around because it's so beautiful, and it looks really good in coffee shops too. When I go to Starbucks, oh yeah, I never go to Starbucks. I don't have the money for it. I go to McDonald's and get a cup of coffee in the drive-thru, and they don't really care if I have a MacBook Pro. I know my laptop says Lenovo instead of MacBook Pro, but you know, it works for me, and besides, I can take my little MacBook and still be kind of as cool. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. Would you go out and buy a MacBook Pro right now? Or would you be satisfied with what you have? As always, like and subscribe, share it if you enjoyed this video, and thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time on Fast Gadgets.